for guests who would never arrive. Rita Ellsworth adjusted the collar of her golden dress. The one she had saved for this night, the one that made her feel less like someone's widow and more like the artist she had always dreamed of becoming. At 62, she was finally hosting her very first solo art exhibition. The gallery lights reflected off her canvases, illuminating more than 2 decades of hidden creativity that had lived quietly in her basement while she raised a family. She had mailed the invitations weeks ago, each envelope carefully written in her elegant script, each carrying not just an invitation but a silent plea, "Please come see who I really am." Rita's heart carried both excitement and dread. Would her children notice? Would they care? She wanted so much for this night to be a celebration of both her art and her family, a chance to show them the woman beyond the apron and the errands. The gallery owner, Mr. Martin, offered her an encouraging smile, but Rita felt the sting of something missing. As she looked out, she saw a scattering of supportive neighbors, her old art teacher beaming with pride, and a few kind strangers admiring her work. Yet the front row, 7 seats she had reserved for her family, remained empty. Rita swallowed the ache in her throat. She had chosen her dress, her words, her courage, hoping for their presence. And now she stood before the crowd, her hands trembling slightly, her voice searching for steadiness. "These paintings," she began, "are pieces of myself. They are fragments of a life I gave to others, and now, at last, I am giving them to myself." She paused, looking again at the empty chairs, and felt something shift inside her. A quiet realization. Sometimes love is not measured by words, but by presence. And tonight their absence was louder than any applause could ever be. Rita Ellsworth had dreamed of this night not as a solitary triumph, but as a family celebration. She wanted her children to see her not just as mom who cooked and cleaned and answered every phone call, but as Rita, a woman who created, who had her own inner world. She had spoken to each of them in the weeks leading up to the exhibition, her voice carrying a hope she hadn't dared to express in years. Michael, the eldest at 39, had assured her with the confidence of someone used to smoothing things over. "I wouldn't miss it, Mom," he'd said, his tone wrapped in a warm but slightly distracted air. "Claire is excited to see your work too." Rita believed him because she wanted to. Laura, her middle child at 36, was brisk, always rushing, always on a call. "I'll try my best, Mom. You know how unpredictable client work can get." Still, she had asked for extra invitations for colleagues, which made Rita secretly believe her daughter might surprise her. And Daniel, her youngest, only 32, had sounded genuinely curious. "I didn't realize you'd been painting this seriously, Mom. I'd love to bring Emily, if that's okay." That conversation had been the spark that made Rita buy the golden dress. For the first time in years, she felt like maybe they would finally see her. But as the clock ticked past the start time, messages began to arrive. Michael wrote first, running late. "Claire's mom surprised us with a spa day package. Rain check?" Then Laura, "So sorry. Emergency call came up. I'll come by during the week, promise." And finally Daniel, Emily's ex, had a crisis. "I couldn't leave her alone tonight. I'll make it up to you." 3 messages, 3 excuses. Rita stared at the empty row of chairs and felt her chest tighten. The gallery around her buzzed with admiration, but all she could hear were the words not spoken, the love not shown. They thought there would always be a next time, another chance. But Rita knew, in that moment, something inside her had shifted for good. As the evening unfolded, Rita moved through the gallery like a hostess in a dream. Strangers stopped her to compliment a brushstroke, to ask about the inspiration behind a stormy seascape or the tender portrait of a young woman gazing out a window. Her former art teacher, Ms. Harrington, clasped her hands with pride. A couple from Portland purchased 2 paintings on the spot, promising to return for more. For the first time in decades, Rita felt her work was being seen, truly seen. And yet, every compliment seemed to echo back toward those 7 empty chairs. Each smile from a stranger reminded her of the faces that were not there. She poured herself a glass of wine she did not drink, listening to the sound of her phone buzzing again and again inside her purse. Each vibration carried another apology, another excuse wrapped in affectionate words that cost nothing. At 9 p.m. the crowd began to thin. Rita accepted the gallery owner's congratulations, smiled politely, and kept her gaze steady though her heart felt like glass. Finally, she dared to look at the messages. "Michael, sorry again, Mom. Hope it went well. We'll celebrate tomorrow. Laura, sending love. Can't wait to see the pieces in person. Daniel, I promise I'll bring Emily by this weekend. She deleted them one by one without replying. When the last guest had gone, Rita helped gather the untouched glasses, her golden dress catching the dim light. To her surprise, she felt no tears. Instead, there was a strange clarity settling into her bones, like a painting finally drying after years of waiting. She thought of all the birthdays postponed, the Christmas dinners missed, the anniversaries quietly erased. Tonight was not an accident, it was the truth revealing itself. Rita whispered to herself as she locked her car door, "Tomorrow morning, I'm calling my lawyer." For the first time in her adult life, the words tasted like freedom. The next morning, Rita Ellsworth walked into the polished office of Margaret Hill, a lawyer she had known for years. The space smelled faintly of leather and old books, the kind of room where decisions carried weight. Margaret, elegant in her navy suit and silver hair tied neatly at the back, looked up with calm authority. "Rita," she said, motioning to the chair across from her desk, "what brings you here so early?" Rita sat down, her golden dress replaced by a simple cardigan, but her eyes shone with determination. "I want to change my will," she said, her voice steady. "I want to restructure everything." Margaret raised a brow, not with judgment but curiosity. "All right," she replied slowly. "Tell me what you're thinking." For the next 20 minutes, Rita outlined her vision. The house valued near $900,000. The insurance payout from her late husband. The investment accounts she had quietly maintained. Even her paintings, which now carried commercial value after last night's exhibition. "All of it," she said, "will go into a charitable trust, the Ellsworth Foundation for Women in Arts. I want it to support women over 50 who are finally ready to pursue the dreams they set aside for their families." Margaret set down her pen. "That is a significant decision. Are you certain this is not a reaction to what happened last night?" Rita's voice did not waver. "Last night was only the final straw. My children have shown me, again and again, that I am optional. I will no longer spend my life hoping for scraps of their attention. I want what I've built to matter, even if not to them." Margaret leaned back, studying her client. "Rita, I must ask this plainly. Are you doing this to punish them, or to protect yourself?" Rita thought for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "Neither. I am doing this to honor the woman I ignored for decades, the woman who painted in secret, who buried her dreams. I am protecting her, and if my children see this as punishment, that is because they still don't understand the difference between love spoken and love shown." Margaret smiled faintly, sensing the resolve behind those words. "Then let's begin," she said, opening a fresh folder. And with the scratch of a pen across paper, Rita's life began to take a new shape. That evening, just as Rita was setting her teacup in the sink, she heard a soft knock at the door. It was not the sharp, insistent rhythm of her children. This one was gentler, hesitant, as though the visitor wasn't sure she should even be there. Rita opened the door to find a young woman in scrubs, her dark hair tied back in a messy bun. "Mrs. Ellsworth," the woman asked politely. "I'm Sophia Ramirez. I live down the street. I hope I'm not intruding." Rita hesitated, then nodded. "What can I do for you?" "I was at your exhibition last night," Sophia explained quickly, her voice warm but shy. "I bought the small painting of the lighthouse, the one with the storm clouds. It reminded me of my grandmother's house in Puerto Rico. She was an artist too, though she never got to show her work to anyone." Recognition stirred. Rita remembered the young woman asking the gallery owner about payment plans. "You paid in installments," she said softly. Sophia blushed. "Nursing school loans," she admitted, "but I couldn't leave without it. Art is proof. Proof that someone was here, that their feelings mattered." Rita felt a lump rise in her throat. She stepped aside and motioned for Sophia to come in. The two women sat at the kitchen table as Rita poured chamomile tea. They spoke of art, of family, of how easy it was to be overlooked when your role was always caretaker. "My ex-husband," Sophia said carefully, "would disappear for days, then come back with flowers and apologies. I forgave him 6 times before I realized forgiveness without change just teaches people they can hurt you safely." Rita looked at her, surprised by the clarity in someone so young, and for the first time since the empty chairs at the gallery, she felt something warm stir inside her, not anger, not disappointment, but recognition. Perhaps she was not as alone as she thought. The following morning, 3 cars pulled into Rita Ellsworth's driveway with the precision of a planned mission. From her kitchen window, Rita watched her children step out, their faces drawn tight with unease. Michael straightened his tie, Laura clutched her phone like a lifeline, and Daniel shifted nervously beside his girlfriend Emily, who looked as though she wished to be anywhere else. Sophia, already seated at the table with a mug of coffee, gave Rita a calm nod. "You don't have to let them in," she reminded gently. Rita inhaled deeply. "I know," she replied, "but today I will." When she opened the door, Michael began immediately, using the smooth, professional tone he relied on at work. "Mom, we need to talk." "Hello, Michael. Hello, Laura. Hello, Daniel," Rita answered evenly. Then, to Emily, "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." Inside, the children perched uneasily on the living room chairs, glancing around at the paintings adorning the walls. Rita remained standing, steady as the oak furniture around her. Laura spoke first, her voice brisk. "Mom, we know we let you down. We came to apologize. We'll make it up to you. Let's plan a proper dinner, maybe invite your friends. And Michael wants to buy one of your larger pieces." Michael pulled out his checkbook with a practiced flourish. "The biggest canvas you've got," he offered, as though money could erase absence. Rita's eyes narrowed. "You want to celebrate me at a time that suits you, to buy my art now that it has financial value. But where were you when it was just something that mattered to me?" The silence that followed was sharp. Daniel finally broke it. "Mom, that's not fair. We're here now, aren't we?" Rita's voice hardened. "Fair. Fair would have been showing up when you promised. Fair would have been remembering that I matter, even when it's inconvenient." Sophia shifted in her chair, her presence steady. Then she spoke, her tone respectful yet firm. "You're not here because you suddenly realized your mother is a full person. You're here because something changed in the balance, and you don't know how to control it anymore." Michael bristled. "Excuse me, but who are you two?" "I'm someone who shows up," Sophia cut in quietly. "Someone who recognizes value when she sees it." Laura stood abruptly, cheeks flushed. "Mom, you're clearly going through some sort of crisis." "No," Rita corrected, her voice steady. "I'm going through clarity." She walked to her desk and returned with a folder, placing it firmly on the coffee table. "Yesterday, I changed my will. This house, the investments, the insurance, every painting, it now belongs to the Ellsworth Foundation for Women in Arts. A place for women who have been told their dreams don't matter." Laura snatched up the papers, eyes scanning quickly. This can't be legal." "It is," Rita replied. "Handled by Margaret Hill, the same lawyer who settled your father's estate." Michael's face turned pale. "Mom, you can't be serious." "I am," Rita said, her hands steady. "For years you treated me like a convenience store, always open, always stocked, no questions asked. But the store is closed." The room fell silent. Her children stared at her, not as if they didn't recognize her, but as if they were finally seeing her for the first time. Rita rose from her chair and motioned toward the staircase. "Come with me," she said simply. Confused, the children followed her up the steps, Sophia trailing behind like a steady witness. They entered Rita's bedroom, where 12 canvases lined the walls. These were not the landscapes or still lifes displayed in the gallery. These were self-portraits, painted over the last 2 years, each one capturing a different moment in her journey. The first showed Rita at 22, eyes wide with ambition, brush in hand. Another revealed her at 35, exhausted but determined, painting by lamplight while her children slept. One canvas, perhaps the most striking, portrayed her at 60, silver hair framing a lined face, but eyes ablaze with possibility. Laura gasped softly. "Mom, these are beautiful." Rita shook her head. "They are not about beauty. They are about truth." She looked at her children, her voice firm. "For 32 years, I taught you that my needs were negotiable, that my dreams could wait. I let you believe I was optional, because I treated myself as optional." Michael ran a hand through his hair, the gesture of a boy caught in trouble. "We didn't know." "You didn't ask," Rita replied. "Not once in 3 decades did any of you ask me what I wanted beyond being your mother." Daniel's eyes lingered on the portrait of her at 60, the one with fire in her gaze. "You look alive." "I am," Rita said quietly. "For the first time in years, I am fully alive." The silence was heavy but not hostile. It was the silence of realization, the weight of truths too long ignored. Sophia stepped forward, her voice gentle but unwavering. "Your mother is showing you the woman behind the apron, behind the phone calls and the errands. The question is, will you finally see her?" Rita turned back to her children. "This is your choice. See me as the whole person I am, or keep seeing only the version that's convenient. But understand, either way, my life will go on." Back downstairs, the air felt different, heavier with everything that had just been revealed. Rita settled into her armchair, her posture straight, her voice calm but resolute. "I want you to understand something," she began. "My life does not end here. I've already been invited to a residency in Santa Fe, a program for women over 50 who are serious about their art. Next month, I will be there painting, living, and sharing with women who know what it means to wait decades for a chance." Laura's eyes widened. "You're leaving?" "I'm living," Rita corrected. "Whether that happens here or somewhere else depends on whether I have a reason to stay. If you want to be part of my life, you'll need to show up not because you're afraid of losing an inheritance, but because you genuinely care about who I am." Her words hung in the room like a challenge. Michael stared at the floor, Daniel shifted uneasily, and Laura pressed her lips together as though calculating what this new reality meant. Sophia, still seated at the kitchen table, smiled faintly. She saw something the children had not yet grasped: Rita's life was no longer theirs to define. Through the window, late afternoon light spread across the garden, illuminating the flowers Rita had planted seasons ago. For years they had bloomed quietly, unnoticed. Now, like their caretaker, they reached toward the sun with unapologetic brilliance. Rita Ellsworth looked at her children one final time that afternoon. They were grown adults, each successful in their own way, but uncertain now, confronted with a mother they did not fully know. "I am not asking you to fix anything," she said softly. "I am asking you to understand. Some things cannot be undone, they can only be respected." The room was quiet. Emily, Daniel's girlfriend, broke the silence with a timid but honest voice. "If my mother had an art exhibition and I missed it, she would never forgive me. And she would be right." Rita's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. At least someone understood. She rose, walking toward the window where sunlight painted her reflection across the glass. "For decades I let myself vanish inside the role of mother. I disappeared so you could shine. But I am done vanishing." Her words were not angry. They were steady, filled with a clarity that left no room for argument. She turned back once more. "Love is not just a word, it is presence. It is showing up. If you cannot give that, then don't use the words so carelessly." Then, with a deep breath, Rita addressed more than just her children. She addressed every silent listener who might one day feel the same. "To anyone who has ever felt invisible in their own family," she said, "please remember, you are allowed to exist beyond the roles assigned to you. Your presence matters even if others fail to notice." Her gaze softened as she added, "If this story speaks to you, share it. Leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from. And remember to subscribe. Let's keep reminding each other that love is action, not just